folks, when 2xKO, the League of Legends fighting game, posted this pretty awesome Alawi combo on Twitter, I don't think they knew that they were about to start or restart a civil war in the FGC. What is it about this tweet that has people so mad? There are so many angry replies and retweets and everything, and the reason is the notation. If you guys aren't familiar, in fighting games, there are kind of two main schools of thought when it comes to notation. There's the traditional notation where we say things like, you know, up, down, left, right, or use letters to shortcut that, and we use stuff like QCF to mean quarter circle forward or fireball motion. That's the traditional way that things were done in the past, but we also have a more modern version now called Numpad Notation, which I'm going to try to explain to you guys why Numpad Notation is generally preferred by a lot of people. What are the advantages of it? But don't get too comfortable, citizens of Numpadia, because I'm going to be talking about the downsides of Numpad Notation, and there are some, and situations where I think actually using a different type of inputs is more appropriate than using Numpad Notation. So let's get into it. I know this is going to be controversial, but I really wanted to talk about this for a while. I know I usually don't weigh in on like Twitter beef, Twitter drama, but I've kind of wanted to do a Numpad Notation video for a while, so I thought this was a good opportunity. So let's talk about why is Numpad Notation better sometimes. So if you guys don't know, Numpad Notation is generally this. You see this chart right here? If you imagine the numpad from your computer, not your phone. It doesn't work with your phone numpad. It's inverted, which is maybe one of the downsides of Numpad Notation. But a computer numpad, we map the 9 directions of the numpad to the 9 directions that you have access to with your D-pad or your arcade stick or your hitbox or whatever. So 8 is up, 6 is forward, 2 is down, 5 is neutral, and then, you know, all the other numbers to fill everything in. So the reason why Numpad Notation is preferred by a lot of people, I think the first one is that it's kind of a little bit better at crossing language barriers than saying stuff like QCF or down or whatever. I mean, there are some languages out there, of course, Japanese, they don't really use the English alphabet, but they do use the Arabic numerals, so it's a little bit more intuitive for people like that to understand the numpad directions that way. And even with this tweet in particular that I showed you guys, they ran into some trouble posting it on the 2xKO Japan account because they kind of translated everything somewhat literally. So this is like jump L, basically. So they say jump L, jump M, jump H, and all of a sudden this ends up being like a novel that you have to read to get the whole combo. So yeah, people were a little bit taken aback by them translating it directly and not just using Numpad Notation, which for a lot of fans would be more comfortable. Like, you can see this guy in the replies even went through the trouble of translating it to Numpad Notation to be maybe a little bit legible. You can see how much shorter it is. Yeah, this is kind of hard to read because it's like very closely written with no spaces or anything, but yeah, it takes up a lot less space, which is also another upside. But sometimes I wonder if this whole language barrier thing is maybe a little bit overblown. I mean, like, you can see even for Street Fighter, a lot of Japanese fans will write in Numpad Notation. I feel like Street Fighter in the West, we tend to be a little more attached to the old school notation just because it's been that way for a long time. But over there, they are using Numpad Notation, but there's still some stuff that, you know, first of all, they're using stuff like MP, DI, SA, and they would use like J for jump. So the argument that, you know, it's a different keyboard that you have to use, so that's annoying, like, I don't really buy that argument because most of the time they have to use the English alphabet anyway for, you know, a lot of different inputs. And, you know, a lot of times stuff will be written down, like here, I think he wrote throw. Yeah, throw. So it's like, there's going to be a language barrier no matter what, but I will say that I do think using Numpad Notation makes it a little bit easier. Like, if we see this tweet, we're going to have an easier time understanding what this says versus what this says. I have no clue. I need to use Translate to have any chance of understanding what this says. And a lot of times you're like watching a video where they have the combo notation on screen, and yeah, if it's written in another language and it's not Numpad Notation, it just feels like you're kind of screwed. Another big advantage that Numpad Notation has is that you can put any input in there, even if it's a really weird input. And some games have really weird inputs. So I feel like Gold Lewis Dickinson from Strive is like the most easy and obvious to see example because, yeah, he has a half circle forward attack. So we could write that as HCF in traditional notation. But he also has half circle forward over the top like that, like starting in back and then going around the top. So in Numpad Notation, that's 4, 7, 8, 9, 6. Yes, I peeked down at my numpad while I said that to make sure I got it right. So we can actually write that down in Numpad Notation, but how do we write that in traditional notation? Like half circle forward inverted? Like I've seen people say like exclamation point half circle forward. I don't know. That to me that doesn't really, it's not that readable. He also has like this, like half circle up. 2, 3, 6, 9, 8. So again, we can write that in a fairly easy to understand way in Numpad Notation, and then again, the other way, going backwards, would be 2, 1, 4, 7, 8. So yeah, he has all these weird inputs that, in my opinion, are pretty much impossible to communicate easily without Numpad Notation. But it's not just Guilty Gear where this is a problem. I mean, in a lot of older games like Street Fighter 2, Fei Long has this input. We call the move Chicken Wing. I don't even know what the real name of this move is, but the adopted name that the community calls it is Chicken Wing, and this is a half circle forward, up forward. So again, you could write HCF comma UF plus K. You can write that, but to me, it's just like a little bit less intuitive than if you know Numpad Notation, you can just write 4, 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, K, and you know the move, and there's no second guessing what they mean. Like, do they mean like jump forward and kick, or like what do they mean? Like, no, it's unambiguous. And actually, if we try to look up Fei Long combos on the wiki for this game, like these are written in an extremely old school style. Like, check out this combo right here: roundhouse chicken wing, close fierce, XX Fierce Rekka Ken X3. Okay, so you have to know what Chicken Wing is, which isn't the official name of the move. I actually looked up the official name. It's Reku Kyaku is the real name, but everyone says Chicken Wing. So you have to know that it's nicknamed Chicken Wing. You have to know that Fierce means heavy punch and Roundhouse means heavy kick. That's the old school button naming system that they had originating from the Street Fighter games. And you have to know that this move is called Rekka Ken as well. And of course, again, if you're not an English speaker, like this is just impossible. So that was like really old back in the day before we could even get people to start saying LP, MP, HP for the buttons. So we have improved a lot since then, but in, you know, Numpad Notation, this combo is really easy to write. So it's like, here it is, the way they wrote it on the wiki, and here it is in Numpad Notation. And in my opinion, in Numpad Notation, it's a lot less ambiguous and easier to figure out without having to look up any extraneous details. Okay, so we've heard some of the advantages of Numpad Notation, but what are the disadvantages? And there are some. I know some of you guys might get mad at me for acknowledging this, but there are some disadvantages. I think, first of all, it's just less intuitive. Can we just admit that it's less intuitive to learn Numpad Notation than to learn just the directions? I mean, especially if you speak English. And, you know, more and more people all over the world are learning English, or maybe they've been exposed to it. If they play fighting games, they watch streams and stuff, they hear people talk in English and use English terms, even if it's in a different language. So, yeah, I just feel like the directions are a lot more intuitive when you're starting out. You know what up and down and stuff means. You might not know what QCF means, but you'll pick those up naturally with time, whereas Numpad Notation, you really need to look up how to read it. It's kind of like learning a language itself. You have to look up Numpad Notation, and then even once you understand, okay, the 9 directions correlate to, you know, the 9 buttons on the numpad, you still also kind of have to learn to recognize it quickly. Like, you know, if you're learning English and you see this word, you might not have any idea how to say it. You go through and you sound it out like throw, but then, you know, once you've been speaking English for a long time, you just see it and you recognize the word all by itself as a whole. You just see, oh, throughout. I know what throughout looks like, just like I know what 236 looks like, or 623, or 41236. You know, you get used to these things, and then they'll just immediately snap in your mind as, oh yeah, that's what that move is, and you don't have to look down at your numpad and individually feel it out. So I think that, yeah, it's less intuitive and it takes a little bit of time to learn. learn. I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, we can't admit that. And then I think another big issue that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge is just it's very difficult to get people to change, especially when something has been kind of a core part of your community for so long. The way that you write and share information is so innate to the individual scenes that are playing these games that getting everyone to agree at the same time to switch is going to be really, really hard and maybe a little bit unfair to them. I mean, I'm American, obviously, so I know the imperial system. I know about gallons and ounces and stuff, which is just terrible. 5,280 feet in a mile makes no sense compared to, meters and kilometers in metric. But yeah, we still haven't been able to switch just because it's been part of our nation forever, and it's too hard to get everybody to switch at once. And I think it's pretty similar with the Numpad notation. We have games like Tekken where Numpad notation is really incompatible for the Western scene because we use 1, 2, 3, 4 to refer to the buttons. I've seen people say that, like, okay, Numpad notation doesn't work for Tekken, which is just untrue because there are scenes that use Numpad notation for Tekken. Like Korea, for example, they use LP, RP, LK, RK for the kicks, and then they use Numpad notation for the directions. So it's not like it would be impossible for us to switch everything over, but the inertia of getting everyone to switch would be so hard. And yeah, that's why I think that it's going to be really hard, especially for certain scenes that are really entrenched to different button naming conventions like Tekken or like Mortal Kombat. Yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to switch. So maybe there are other things that would be a better focus of our time and attention. I'm not sure. So this all leads back to the question of, should we use Numpad notation? Should we be mad at 2xKO's social media manager for writing out a combo in traditional notation? Or is it okay? And personally, I'm going to say it's okay that they wrote it in traditional notation for a few reasons. First of all, that tweet is not aimed at people like me. That tweet is not aimed at hardcore fighting game people who are looking up tech and who are reading, posts on Twitter from pros like, okay, here's the hot new option select or whatever. No, I think that post is more for beginners, more for people who maybe are interested in Project L but don't know much about it, and they want to be able to see the description of a combo without having to learn a whole new language just to do so. So I think for the case of that tweet, since it's on the main social media account and it's for the English social media account, so it makes sense that we don't really care about the language barrier of writing out things in English because it's for the English social media account. So I think for them, it was fine to write it that way. But I think, if you are making a guide video like I tend to make sometimes, or if you are making a tech video, a tech drop or whatever, if you are a hardcore player, I do think you kind of owe it to yourself to learn Numpad notation. It is the way that most people are sharing tech these days. It is more likely to get your tech seen and understood by people who don't speak your language. And yeah, I think it's just more universal and less game specific, and you're going to be lost if you're trying to learn combos for fighting games in a hardcore manner. If you're trying to read the wikis and whatever and watch the YouTube guides, you're going to be really lost if you don't know Numpad notation. So you should probably learn it. But is there maybe a third option here that's even better than Numpad and better than traditional inputs? What if instead of this, what if the combo was written like this instead with some arrows? Didn't we used to do it like this on Shoryuken forums? We would use the arrow emotes. Now we all have emoji. Of course, it's a huge pain to type out all these emoji, especially on the computer where you don't have access to the emoji keyboard on your phone. So it would be a huge pain. But for something like this 2xKO tweet, they're taking time to write the tweet because, this is the official account. They only tweet, I don't know, once a day or something anyway. So they can take the time to go through and use the emoji. Do you guys think that would be more beginner friendly and not upset those of you like me who are Numpad enjoyers? I think maybe that would be a good solution. So in the future, that would just be my suggestion to Riot social media manager number 2 or whatever who wrote that tweet, is try it with the arrow emoji and see how people take it. What do you guys think? Is this a stupid idea? Are you guys Numpad Notation enjoyers, or are you guys gonna continue to stick to tradition? I will say that if you are a newer fighting game player, or if you're a casual player who isn't out there reading the forums and watching all the guides and all that stuff, I will not be mad at you if you write things out in traditional notation. But if you want to take it to the next level, become hardcore, start going to tournaments, start trying to get master rank and all that stuff, you might do yourself a favor and learn it, because it will make it a lot easier to learn new tech and gather info from others online. So that's about it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.